I've been riding motorcycle in China for almost 30 years. In this video, I want to show you what riders here are willing to pay, not only with money, but with time, convenience, and effort just to keep riding. Let's start with something simple, the price of the bike. Many people see a motorcycle oversee MSRP and assume that's what everyone pays. But for an imported motorcycle in China, the final price is a lot more complicated than that. Let me use my own bike as an example, my BMW R1200 RT, bought in 2017. To make this easier to follow, let's say the overseas MSRP was $10,000. Before a Chinese rider can even put a license plate on this bike, there are several costs stacked on top of that number. I'm not trying to make this a tax lecture. I just want you to understand what someone in China takes on to own an imported bike, as you can see on the screen. After all of that, and then you have to add importer and the dealer margin on top of that, and the final price goes even higher. Of course, this depends on the country, the model, and the local tax policy. Trading agreement and the country of region can also affect import costs. So the final price is not the same for every motorcycle. But the point is simple. For some imported motorcycle, the cost in China can approach twice the overseas MSRP before the rider even starts riding. And that's only the financial cost. And paying more for the bike turns out to be just the first thing. The second challenge is where you are actually allowed to ride. China is a huge country, and the motorcycle regulations vary a lot from city to city. Where I live, Shanghai, there are certain roads and area motorcycles aren't allowed into, but that's not the same everywhere. Some cities have more restrictions, some have fewer. There are no single motorcycle environment that represents all of China. For riders, that means more planning. When I travel by motorcycle, I check the next city before I get there. If there are restrictions, I simply take another route. Is that inconvenient sometimes? Yes. But after 30 years of this, I've learned every place has its own challenges. Managing a city with millions of people is complicated. And I'm not here to argue whether these rules should or should not exist. I just want to show you how riders adapt to the environment they're in. But the cost of riding is not only about where you can go. Another difference is highway access. In many countries, motorcycles are just a normal part of long-distance travel on the highway. In many areas of China, motorcycle access to highways is limited. For someone who loves touring, that's generally inconvenient. But honestly, I'm used to it by now. Leaving Shanghai, I know the national roads well enough to ride them with my eyes closed. Many riders here choose the same way, national roads instead of highways. They are slower, sure, but they also give you something a highway usually can't: small towns, local scenery. The kind of moments you don't get from just arriving fast. That's not me telling myself a story to feel better about it. You can see it in the road trip footage across this channel. So, paying more for the bike, plan more carefully because the riding environment is different. Choose different routes when necessary. These realities exist. But the interesting part is, riders here still ride anyway, because a motorcycle was never just about convenience. It's about the feeling when you start the engine and leave everything else behind for a while. For me, after almost 30 years of riding, I already know these costs exist, and I accept them. Because for many Chinese riders, they are simply part of the price we pay to keep riding. And for me, that's always been worth it.